Hello everybody, welcome back once again. I've got a quick ending discussion video here on Clair Obscur Expedition 33. Obviously going to be spoilers here for the ending, so if you haven't played and you don't want anything spoiled, stop watching. Otherwise, let's do it. So firstly, I chose the Verso ending to throw in here first. I definitely see why some people would think that this is the better of the two endings, and I should say on the offset, the creative director himself said that neither of the endings were supposed to be quote-unquote good endings, right? They were supposed to be the result of hard choices, or impossible choices, I think is what he exactly said. And it does feel like an impossible choice whether to choose to go through with Verso's plan or with Mael's. Here she says, "Don't do this, don't leave me again." Obviously, she, similarly to her mother, have been deeply traumatized by Verso's real-life death. And this kind of feels like losing him again. He says, "You've got this incredible power to paint. You'll never have to suffer a life you don't want." I take that as to mean that she could recreate, different worlds if she so chooses. And here he says, you're okay as she's essentially being gamaged or expelled from Verso's painting. I think that I've got a lot of issues with this ending, specifically just because it seems like any sort of relationship developing that you did feels pointless. If all Verso ever wanted to do was not exist anymore, or I should say this version of Verso, of course, it makes so many of the things that we did during the game and the expeditions themselves as kind of pointless, right? Like, there are these generations of people who are working together to try to, keep existing, essentially. And the actions of Verso here completely erases that. Now, you can argue that it's his choice for that to happen, right? It's sort of him, or at least a version of him, that is creating this world and and continuing to paint. There are obviously a lot of interactions with the real version of Verso, or Verso's soul, in the game, and he does say that the world was very fun and enjoyable before his family members came into the painting and started, specifically his mother and father, I think, really, as well as Clair. And he hates what the painting has basically become. Here is the interaction between Ciel and Verso, which I don't like this shot at all. I think it doesn't really work because Ciel's main goal, is to stop the gamage and bring, and then once she figures out that they can bring everyone back, I don't see why she would want to have anything to do with Verso, who obviously wants everything to end, which would mean her not existing, as well as anyone she loves. So the part here where she kind of reaches out to him, I don't buy that. I kind of feel like that was badly done. Whereas the opposite is true here with Lune. She seems absolutely disgusted by him, and doesn't want anything to do with him. So she just sits down. She knows, though, full well that she can't do anything about what's about to happen. So she's kind of just resigned herself to essentially death. Also, I should say, when he's kind of cradling her, and he says that, you're such a talented paintress and you'll never have to live a life that you don't want. It's interesting because of the parallel between him and her. She is trying to live a life that she wants inside the painting, whereas he is not. He already is living the life there that he doesn't want. So I found that a little bit interesting, but here, obviously, he takes, the part which I think is the representation of his soul here, who is obviously keeping this world going, and taking him with. And of course, here they both gamage, essentially, and I take that to mean the end of every life, unfortunately, though, in the canvas. I have issues with that aspect of it too, because it's explained by one of the conversations with the fading boy that all of the creations here and all the people have souls, right? These are all real people. And so, I don't agree with some people that interpret these paintings and these people in it as like, like AI, right, working. They seem to have, thought processes. They love each other. They have children. They, have happy lives or unhappy lives. So I don't necessarily buy that aspect of it either. But here the shot goes, obviously changes here to the real life family who are gathering around or in front of Verso's grave. I do like the shot here with Renoir and Aline, because it does look like, for one thing, she's kind of been forced to accept reality and not just live her life, decaying inside this painting with her grief. So, a bittersweet ending, certainly for her, for Alicia as well, because again, they're forced to kind of deal with their grief in, I think, what most people would say is a more healthy way, right? And not living out some fantasy in a world that's not the real world. I go both ways though on that. Again, the people, especially in terms of Alicia, right? She's lived essentially two lives with two different families, and certainly they both feel real to her. So that's tough, right? Because again, they're not just mindless automatons inside these paintings. They're people with real feelings, and they care about each other and whatnot. Here, Clair. One of the bigger questions I have about this ending, though, is that Clair here seems kind of distant from the rest of the family, although Alicia does as well. She's kind of off on her own. The only two, obviously, that are embracing are Renoir and Aline. I got a little bit of a sense here that Clair's just kind of going through the motions, and I think it's mostly because of, and again, I could be just looking into it a little bit too much, but the way she actually turns her back to the family and kind of walks off screen, it made me, Clair only really interacted in the canvas in order to try to get Aline essentially expelled, right? So she goes in to help Renoir, and she creates the Nevrons in order to get Aline to leave. Because her priority is, this essentially revenge, and here she just kind of doesn't feel like she's, I don't know, there's just something about that, and the way she turns her back to the family, where she almost seems annoyed here that, we're kind of still going through this, and I think she wants to get back to, kind of plotting her revenge on the writers. At least that was my sense from this scene. And here the perspective switches to behind Alicia. I think this is probably the most depressing scene, where she looks out here at obviously the expedition. Gustav is there, Lune, everyone, and of course they fade away. And I take that to be, she's kind of being forced to say her final goodbyes here, and hopefully she moves on. I think that is maybe the one kind of bittersweet aspect of the ending, is that so she's being forced to move on and deal with her grief. Whether or not she is successful from here on out is I guess maybe up to interpretation or anyone's guess, but unfortunately she's obviously disfigured. She's lost an eye. She's scarred. She doesn't have her voice. So I think this life, is certainly not the one she chooses or would have chosen, which is obviously revealed in Mael's ending, which we will see here in a bit. But again, I think that this ending is actually, in some ways, more depressing, because she's, essentially actually lost her choice. And I think that that's what this game is about a lot of times, and it is explicitly stated a few times by different characters that you know, they're making choices, and unfortunately for this one, Mael, or Alicia's choice, was taken from her, and obviously by Verso, and again but as far as his motivations go, for one thing, he does say that he's tired, right? He doesn't want to be there anymore. He and of course during the Mael ending, which again we'll see in a little bit here, he says, you know, I don't want this life. And that's understandable as someone who is essentially a copy of a real person. You know, and then once the truth is revealed to him, he, you know, breaks off from the family and essentially kind of makes the decision that he wants it to end, and pursues that that action. Also, the guy just has to be completely racked with grief, and I think that's explained through some of the well, specifically the Verso data log, where he's describing what happened between himself and Julie. Julie was someone that he loved or fell in love with, who kind of turned on him once she witnessed a monster, like, basically, you know, kill him, but he didn't die, and so that triggered an event which then he ends up killing her, and that's actually shown in one of Mael's dreams, one of her nightmares. And I think that, you know, he's a person who has lived with a lot of grief, and unfortunately, as it's stated in terms of his axon, is he's actually a liar. Verso is basically lies from the outset that you see him at the beginning, or maybe I should say at the end of Act 1. That's just, you know, a part of his personality, and he essentially lies to all these different expeditions, right? At least I should say that they think that he's working with them to end the Gamage and end the Paintress, but of course that's not what that's not his objective. His objective is literally the opposite. And honestly, his ending results in every single person in this painting being gamaged or, you know, destroyed. Okay, so next up here is Mael's ending. I like certain aspects of this ending a little bit more than the other, but again, keep in mind the creative director has stated that neither ending was supposed to be good and neither ending was supposed to be bad. So I think the tough thing, right, is it is indeed a choice here between Mael's happiness or Verso's happiness, and we can't have both. So keeping that in mind here, kind of interesting too. I think when Mael uses Stendhal, she does, or Stendhal as I did there to do the kill shot, I think that she says fiery death, which would be a little bit of a disturbing thing to be saying to Verso. But Verso is pleading with her, obviously, Alicia, stop him from painting, and she's saying, please don't say that. You know, obviously she wants to stay here in this world with Verso, this version of her brother. And he's saying, you know, hey, please listen to me. Only you can do this. You can do this. Please unpaint me. And that's very similar to when we meet the painted version of Alicia at the end of the Reacher level, right, where Mael faces off against her, defeats her, and then unpaints her. So here he says, I don't want this life. I don't want this life. And she says, I just wanted to live this lifetime together. This lifetime that was stolen from us. Please, brother, please. Obviously, Mael as well as Aline are I think, both, you know, very affected by Verso's death. But he repeats, I don't want this life. I think that, you know, living so many years trapped essentially within this painting, and there he says, you know, help me. That's probably the most heartbreaking of the lines here. But his years of living within the painting and experiencing, you know, many expeditioners die. Some of them he's befriended. Julie in particular, you know, is one of the ones that he says, actually, if there was somebody that he would bring back, I think he references her. And in his journal, data log, you know, he does state that he was basically, he was a coward, and he didn't explain to them, what was happening, right? Because after Julie witnessed him basically being killed by a Nevron, and then just kind of getting back up, they didn't trust him after that. Here I like if you could grow old, would you find a reason to smile? I like this line, and I do wonder their intent here, and I'll explain that in a little bit. But anyways, back to the Julie. I think that deeply affected him, and he has a lot of regrets in not being honest with her, and not being honest with a lot of the expeditions that he traveled with in his intentions, right? He has basically deceived many people over the course of the years to get what he wants, which again is to expel Aline from the painting. He's joined all these expeditions hoping that, while they hope that they are going to end the Paintress and stop the Gamage, whereas his objective is to basically just end everything here, and all of them would then end with it. But here the scene changes to this orchestra hall, very similar to the one towards the in the Lumiere section of the game, right, where there was the big painting. I'm sorry, the big piano with the boy playing. Now, this little boy here, I'm not sure if that is supposed to be Verso's child, because there are lyrics apparently in French that say something to the effect of, Lune perhaps comforting Verso in this world. So it could be it could be their child. The only other thing I could see it maybe being is just the young version of Verso himself. Now, the one thing I will say here, though, is he's not painting, though. So if he is the one that kind of keeps this world going, then Mael would have had to figure something else out, right? Or it's just not that same boy. Here, obviously, Gustav and Sophie are together in this version. Obviously, her having brought them back, it I guess stands to reason that the reasons for them splitting are no longer the case, right? And they could be back together in the way that they both kind of want. Now, here's where it gets a little eerie, though, and here's where I do think that this is why the ending should not be viewed as something good. Now, I don't necessarily think that like some people do, that Mael is somehow puppeteering Verso. I don't think that that's happening there. And she gives a nod here, and then he kind of nods back, which makes me feel a little bit better about the scene. But again, I don't think that like some people have theorized that she's like controlling him in some way, because that's not a power that the paintresses have, or paintress-eye, or the painters have. Certainly. So I don't get that sense, but he does seem uncomfortable here. That it could just be his age, right? He is obviously aged, and she, seems to have recreated him without immortality, which I think is where the line comes, if you could grow old, would you find a reason to smile? Now, he doesn't smile here, though, either. So, again, that's why I think they did a good job with this on not really making you feel like everybody is happy here. Here it looks like Lune has aged a little bit, too, which I feel like could give a little bit of an explainer to everybody, or the fact that might be their child. And then here, obviously, the screen shifts to Mael's face, and I think we're just reminded that in real life she is, kind of decaying. And here, actually, if you pause it, you can actually see what appears to be a ring on Verso's left finger. Again, that he may have always had that. I don't think I ever, noticed in any of or in the rest of the game, but again, which I think maybe does lend a little bit of credit to the theory that Lune and Verso are together, and then, possibly that's their child. But I think that, again, I think the game is based on choices, not only player choices, but choices of the characters as well. And obviously, in this choice, Mael has made her choice, and that's to live in the painting with her other family, her family that she feels closer to, and who doesn't judge her in the way that maybe her older sister does, and have expectations of her that she feels that she's not meeting, or that her mother, I should say specifically, feels that she isn't meeting. She's again, her sister and her mother seem to be very harsh, whereas her father actually genuinely loves her and wishes for the best, which is best shown by the axon. What is it? She who reaches for the sky. And so a little bit though more about the ending and why there are good aspects to it, right? So with Renoir and Aline expelled, there's no more gamages and everyone can kind of live their lives. I think I like the fact that Verso is sitting down at the piano, which was his passion, again his passion for music, and not to paint, right? And again, I don't know if it's his son or if it's the younger version of Verso, but also not painting. So I don't think, though, I don't really think that that's the young version of Verso, because I don't see how the world would continue on. So that's the one aspect of this ending that's a bit dark, right? Is if the younger, or if because this world is still going, I take that to mean that the young Verso is still painting, which was obviously not Verso's wish. Though there are other aspects which maybe we can feel a little bit better about that as well, which was the young Verso when he was painting as the young boy. When we have a few of the different conversations with him, he does say that the world was a very happy place before his relatives came in. I think specifically his mother and father and Clair. Right, there was no real conflict. It's inhabited by Gestrels, who are jovial creatures, and an SKA, right, who is just basically there to comfort people in their darkest times. So again, I think there are ways to look at this ending actually in a bit of a positive light. But the question though is the little boy still painting, and does he want to or not? Certainly Verso has been brought back, which was not his wish, but I also question, did Mael give him a life that he could enjoy, right, or could like, because he didn't want the life that was essentially made for him or forced upon him by Aline, right? So she gave him the chance to grow old. It remains to be seen whether he found a reason to smile. And on that note, I'm going to end this one here. As always, thank you for watching.